I'm no stranger to the SCP Foundation. The website began in 2008 when a young Bones was still in middle school. I was doomed from the start. To this day, I still go back to read old favorites and new hotness. The Foundation has inspired a number of games from its resulting popularity over the years. I haven't touched many beyond the original Containment Breach. Most of the shooters haven't looked interesting enough or are too early in dev for me. I also have too much anxiety interacting with another human being to play Secret Labs alone. But when I learned that there was a strategy game set in the SCP universe, my interest was piqued. SCP Strategy's first year anniversary has just come up, so I think it's time I take a look. The quality of the visual presentation in SCP Strategy varies. For the most part, you're going to be looking at this interactive globe. I really like how the MTFs and bases are visually connected to each other by lines. It helps to get across the idea of a global network seeking to secure, contain, and protect. You can set different themes to suit your visual preference or need. However, these will only apply to the globe and not the rest of the UI, which has its problems. Overall, it is functional, but I hate that there is no dismiss all button for the notifications. The right side of my screen was constantly covered in alerts to the point that I mostly stopped looking at them during my playthrough. Where the visual quality really varies is with the minigames. The worst of it is a manual research minigame that is using some chunky car models disguised by darkness. But that's the standout. The others at least mesh visually together, even if it's not the most impressive thing I've seen. I'm the kind of person who cares more about consistency in visuals than fidelity. The soundscape is oddly soothing for the most part. The music reminds me of something that would play in the background of Factorio. Present and non-offensive. Except for the times where things get serious and the serious music plays. But that's about it for the sound. Outside of a few selection and notification beep boops, this is a very quiet game. Perfect to have a podcast or a show running in the background. However, your attention might be full with SCP Strategy. The main goal of the game is to achieve 10,000 prestige points from studying monsters locked in cages. Monsters must be found, which is where mobile task forces come into play. MTFs are deployed to anomalous zones across the world to investigate anomalous reports. Sometimes they'll find an object, other times it was some goat herder who saw a helicopter. When they do find something, it is inevitably locked away to be experimented on. Researching an object will give you science points at the cost of action points for a set amount of time. Occasionally there will be events that pop up. Sometimes it is better to accept a financial setback than risk a massive containment breach. All the while you have to ensure that the Foundation remains financially solvent. Too much debt equals a game over. The game is broken up into the global stage, department screens, and various minigames. The globe plays at either normal or double speed. There's no pause function, which causes interfacing with the globe to feel overly hectic. The larger your Foundation, the more MTFs there are to maneuver and anomalies to discover. You'll be constantly zipping around the globe just to please various nations, justifying the Foundation's funding. Except, there is technically a pause function. Whenever you enter a department screen, the game will pause. And you can use this to your advantage, as I will demonstrate in a bit. There are 5 departments: Management, Internal, Intelligence, Engineering, and Scientific. Management is where you determine how much money to grift from the world's governments and how much you spend on Foundation employees. It also shows your progress towards the victory condition, a variety of stats, and the satisfaction of governments. I honestly never saw any indication that a country was pissed, so it mostly serves as a GDP per capita list. The Internal department is where Foundation branches and MTFs are created or upgraded. Upgrades will provide bonuses like faster searching and more action points at the cost of higher expenses. Make sure to balance the Foundation's accounting sheet. The Intelligence Agency is where the Foundation spies upon various groups of interest like the Global Occult Coalition and the Shark Punching Center. Here you get a blurb about each GOI, their power level, diplomatic relations levels, combat difficulty, win-loss record, and the ability to attack an organization. If you are to do this, then a hex grid turn-based strategy game will commence. It reminds me of a dumbed-down Heroes of Might and Magic. Turrets and soldiers take turns to shoot at each other until one side is wiped out. Just as you can attack others, they will attack you and take some of your toys if they win. There is barely any strategic depth to this minigame, and I think the game suffers for it. Because every time one of my bases is attacked, I groan in dismay instead of looking forward to it. Engineering is the department where real shit gets done. This is the Foundation's research tree split into various sections. Important skills are marked with stars, and you should prioritize them. Don't be me and spend half the game without sleeping gas. Engineering is the only section where the UI really bothers me. It's very uninteresting to look at, and the fact that it scrolls horizontally instead of vertically bothers my OCD for some indescribable reason. The scientific department is the part of the Foundation that actually studies the anomalies found by the MTFs. Researching objects rewards you with science points to spend on engineering upgrades and prestige points needed to win. Each object will have a limited number of times they can be researched, and by extension, research points available. Research is either done passively over time or through the various science minigames. I enjoyed the wave matching one, and I could personally do without the complex experiments or outsourcing games. Each object has a description that pretty much matches those on the actual SCP Wiki, going as far as to credit the original creators of SCPs were applicable. But there is one thing that bothers me. And it's how the SCPs are not given their proper names in descriptions. I guess this is so you can name the objects anything you want, except I found multiple instances where an SCP is referred to by its given designation. The lack of consistency bothers me, and I would have much preferred to have that wow moment where I captured an SCP I already knew. Like, oh my god, it's 682, hope we don't die! One last minigame to cover are the Containment Breaches. Working with anomalous materials, bad things can occasionally happen, but it is how one responds to accidents that really matters. Nearby MTFs will respond, but it'll take some time to get on site. Until then, it is up to the facility director to handle the crisis. This can be achieved through the use of sleeping gas, cleansing fire, shock therapy, or copious amounts of Class D personnel. Each section must be over 70% contained before the minigame will end. It will require the strategic use of assets to achieve, especially since the use of some of those assets will cause control to be lost in nearby sections. Now, to channel my inner tea drinker, I would like it to be known how exploitable the pause function of these menus can be. Actions happen in real time, so the intent is that you set up a bunch of research and engineering tasks before maneuvering MTFs for a minute. But, as I said, the tasks happen in real time instead of game time. So if you were to say, sit in the science screen and set up a bunch of research, it may start finishing before you fill up the queue. Using this method, I captured a bunch of SCPs and sat on the science screen to win the game. And I still had some SCPs that weren't fully researched. This is clearly not the intended way to play, but it is far easier than having to juggle moving MTFs around in a never-ending series of searches while managing your research queue. I think SCP Strategy is a great concept that fails to execute, and this is coming from a place that really wants to like the game. The systems do not mesh well together, and the game is easily exploitable due to a design choice. My attention was constantly split between too many things with limited ability to automate. I come off SCP Strategy with a sense of disappointment, frustration, and stress. It's a very ambitious game that unfortunately misses the mark in some ways while nailing others. SCP Strategy ends up riding the coattails of its source property without doing anything to make the game stand on its own. And it's because of this mixed record that I don't see myself going back to play it after finishing this video. If you find yourself interested in SCP Strategy, I recommend grabbing it on sale. Thanks for watching. More garbage to come.